Good morning, everyone. This is the Queen of Restream, Fran Lewis, MJ Network, after my sister Marcia Joyce, and this show is dedicated to her memory. She's earned it. Stephen Manchester is here. Let me put on the glasses so I can see what I'm doing. Set at a medium security penitentiary in the mid 1990s, Ledger is a faith based story that shines a light into the darkness, allowing the reader to discover brutality, foreign world. This is all true. Although told from three alternating perspectives, officer, inmate, and sergeant, many of the same questions arise. Can any goodness be found in the shadows? What about forgiveness, redemption, and grace? And if the code is clear, loyalty above all things except honor, when should an officer cross the line to police one of his or her own? And it's on the news every day. That's why. So I could do this without my reading glasses because these look better. What is the primary message and behind this title? What are you trying to tell everybody?
So first of all, Fran, thank you for having me this morning. I really appreciate it.
I'm thrilled. This is so exciting.
I love talking to you. So if I can just take one step back before I answer that, but this book is a companion novel to The Menu. And in The Menu, I wrote a book about, finding redemption and grace and people picking their lives from a menu and then kind of working their way through it. Right. But I was working with hospice in New England who adopted The Menu. So I was working with their caregivers and their volunteers, and I was a keynote speaker. And in the rear of the room, there was a woman that said, "Listen, I love The Menu, but at the beginning of the book, the protagonist, the main character, can pick his life from the menu. And God said that a conscience doesn't have to be mandatory, right?" So she said, because all the characters were kind and they were, good, it would be nice to see, it would have been nice to see if one of them, right, wasn't. And as soon as she said that, Fran, I'm like, oh, here we go, right? So I had worked in a prison,
Yeah, I remember you said.
For about 10 years, right? So right away, I knew I'm going to end up writing this novel to follow The Menu. And really, if you're going to look for forgiveness and mercy and redemption and, anything from a spiritual perspective, we're better than to go into a prison, right? And I'm talking about all the characters, all the players within the prison. So really, I think this book is about shining light in the darkness and seeing if people, if you can change people's hearts.
That's what's really interesting. What's even more interesting is that I worked in a bowling center. I was the whatever they called me, the hoochie coochie mama.
Right.
And there was a group of men called Eastchester men. They all worked. They were prison guards.
Yeah.
Every one of them. And they actually invited me to come to where they were.
Yeah.
I should go. I was brave.
Yeah.
I went to Rikers. I went to all of them. So I was taking a master's and I had to go. And I couldn't believe it. And they were very nice. But I could tell you, when I used to call, because I had to call to tell them that their league was ready. And the wives would say to me, "Are you the one that he's cheating with?" I go, "Oh, yes, definitely." I laughed so hard. I go, "I'm just a telemarketer. I'm an old lady." I laughed. So, chapter 1, we meet the Spirit and God. Why did God send each one of them on their journey and their purpose? I have a couple of people that could use a couple of journeys like that.
Yeah, I hear you. So when I wrote The Menu, it was me trying to write a story.
Yeah, I remember that.
For my children, right? So that they wouldn't fear death, right? So at the time when I wrote that book, we had a lot of death in the family, right? There were a few passings of people.
Yeah.
So I remember telling my kids, like, listen, you don't worry about coming here. Don't worry about leaving, right? And then it became, before we're sent here, and this is the concept of the idea of the whole series, was before we come here, do we literally, do we choose? I mean, do we choose our gender? Do we choose our skin, right? Our purpose for being here? And when you look at it on a scale, right, it's only, everybody's life is over in a blink of an eye, right? When compared to the years in human history. So I found it so interesting to have one of the characters or all the characters pick their lives from a menu so that you as the reader know exactly what they chose, but their memories are erased when they come into this world. as babies, right? And then they start to live out the life that they chose, but without knowing that they actually picked it.
I felt so bad, especially for the prisoner. I
Yeah,
felt so bad for him. I realized that the guard was whatever, but the officer was the one that was basically in charge.
yeah,
And oh boy, wow, I was rooting for him sometimes.
yeah, right.
I know. So the interaction and question the spirit asked, how does God respond to them and why? Now that you know something, sometimes you get up in the middle of the night and something bothers me and I go, dear God, would you please show me the way? And then
Yeah,
I pray, help.
yeah. It's a well, and this is definitely it's a faith-based story, right? And there's a
Yeah.
spiritual undercurrent to the whole thing. But I think before they come into the world and then after they leave, what I love about this series and the ledger as well, when somebody dies in the book, they're still a character. They still exist, right? So we get into that, but God answers all their questions. And what I love
Yep.
even about the God character, right, is he's not fire and brimstone. It's not an overly religious type of book. It's almost like before God sends them into the world, it's like an excited grandfather putting his grandchild right on a roller coaster. You're going to love this, and there's going to be ups and downs, the whole thing. But when you get back to me, I can't wait to talk to you about it, right? So I think there's some trepidation and there's some nervousness about people coming into the world, but the trick with this book was we have three alternating points of view, right? So you have an inmate's point of view,
Yeah.
you have the guard's point of view, and then you have the sergeant's point of view, right? And in the beginning, when the main character is picking his life from a menu, I intentionally don't lean into who it is that's actually picking from the menu. Right. So when he decides not to accept the conscience, this is not going to be a good,
Yeah.
right? But I don't want you to know who that is until the very end. So that's the big twist.
There are a lot of people in the world that have no conscience.
Oh yeah, I
And
agree.
there are a lot of people I know that have no conscience, and they'll say to me, I mean, people, my friends, I'm going to do it anyway. I said, well, somehow God's going to get back at you. I don't think you want to do that.
Right.
And I mean, so many people have been, the dentist did so many bad things to me. And I said, the only time I ever really get upset is if I can't, my face bothers me. So I put a little review on his website.
Right. Right.
Nothing there. I just say, thank you for destroying my life. I appreciate it.
Oh,
So each prisoner is alike and yet so different as we hear the reasons for their deeds. But Roy, Jim, and Yannick are linked in as one with God as we learn they really are. Our last lessons they endured and how they face God in the end. How do you, I mean, I think I don't know if they see him or they feel his spirit or whatever. You sort of know he's there.
yeah, yeah. He's there through the whole book, right? And there's one line that I love toward the end, and obviously it's important for me not to give up, right, the ending of this, but there's one line where one of them in prayer says, where were you? And God says, I was always with you, but you had to
Yeah, remember that.
you had to ask for me, right? So, what I love about this is, I believe that we're all connected at a certain level. I don't understand why some people do what they do. I mean, I've met my fish; they're a sociopath
Yeah,
and psychopath. And I wonder, right? Like when you look at the master plan, why? I mean, why do people hurt each other the way that they do? Especially as I get older, I start to realize we really are all connected, right? I mean, it's usually when you hurt somebody, you're hurting yourself, right? It's kind of self mutilation. So um, we got into that, but the title, the ledger, comes from at the beginning of the first book, the menu. God hands him a menu, and then when he picks his entire life, God then hands him a ledger and says, "Listen, everything you say, do, and think, we're going to go over it when you get home."
you know what I love? I think I have this memorized.
Yeah,
Every chapter has a heading, a different one,
yeah,
that sort of foretells
yeah,
what you're going to read.
yeah.
So I got
I love
this.
chapter.
Getting
I
really
love
good at this.
chapter. Yeah, I love
And
chapter titles.
I read this 3 times because I wanted to make sure I got it right.
Yeah.
I never
Well,
did. I
thank
never did anything wrong. They face God, but chapter 23, I read it as the last words. Here is your ledger. Take them home.
you. Yeah.
That was like, how many people ever sit down and think about their life?
Right.
And really, how would I change what I did?
Yeah.
Would I do it differently? And most people would say, I'm happy with the way I did it.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's, I'm guessing a good thing, right? It's just for me, I'm obviously a very spiritual man. It's believe it or not, it's a very personal thing to me. So I'm not out in the world preaching, but I am a writer, right? So everything bleeds through in my writing. But for me, I have a relationship with God. I'm in prayer a lot. I share that with people, but then you take that type of life and you go into, in behind the wall where there's so much negativity, so much violence, and there's so much brutality that, you question is God there, right? And that's really what I'm doing. I'm trying to put a light into the darkness.
Well, there's a character that I didn't like, Lampert.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Lampert. Yeah, he, just whatever. And
Yeah,
then of course the police department. It's just like there was so many. And then there's David. Oh, I like David. I felt so bad. And of course, chapter 28, I read several times because it's the title of the book.
the ledger.
And I mean, I love it. So where am I here? Yeah. The officer who killed him, pages 290, 294, they sadly say 292 was his death treated. When they have a death in a prison, do they even bother?
Yeah, they do. Oh
They
yeah,
do?
yeah, they do. Because when I worked inside, I did 5 years, working the blocks and the yards, right? And then I was promoted to inner perimeter security. So I was an IPS officer, which is essentially a detective behind the wall.
Mm.
And part of what we did is, if there were any crimes committed, anything from assault and battery to rape to, murder, just because they're locked behind the wall doesn't mean they're done with their mayhem, right? So, we would investigate it. And murder is obviously, at the highest. I mean, we'll even bring in state police, right, or independent investigators to come in and take a look at it to make sure that, whoever's guilty, needs to be held accountable for that.
What happens? I have to add this. I just like the word really got me. What happens in a prison when, of course, these three guys are not going to admit that they did anything wrong.
Right.
So what happens when there is a confession? How do they handle that? I know that there was one on the news yesterday.
Yeah.
After 25 years, the Gallo, whatever that maniac,
Yeah.
that killed God knows how many women, they sentenced him to 25 years to life. Big deal. They should have given him the death penalty.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
And
he
he'll
should have. He
probably
deserved
be
that.
put in we call it the box, right? But he'd be put in the box for 23
Yeah,
and a half hours a day segregation, or what some institutions call it the shoe
you
program.
think, yeah.
But it's, when you mess with rapists don't do well in prison, pedophiles do even less. But what most people don't understand is it's strength in numbers, right? So I worked in a population of 1,400 inmates, and you would be shocked by how many of them were sex offenders, right? And just because they're sex offenders doesn't mean they're violent,
I worked in my school for too many years. A lot of you loved it. Absolutely loved it. But I walked up to a fourth grade class to pick up my reading group, my writing group.
Yeah.
And I stood by the door. The teacher didn't know I saw. He had his hands all over these boys, every one of them in the
Oh,
wrong place. When I walked in, one of the kids went, my mother needs you to call her. Could you call her now? I got the point. I took him out and I said, you're not going back in there
mm,
ever. I'm going to protect you. And he looked at me. He said, how can you do that? Because I know your father.
yeah.
And I know your father's going to come in. I
And kill
could,
us.
he wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
And I finally, I said to my principal, this is what happened. She wouldn't believe me. Then when they finally arrested him, she said, oh, well, so and so did it. I said, no, she didn't. I told you that weeks ago that he was doing that.
Right.
When I picked up his reading group or whatever, or I worked with him, I wound up working with the kids in the back of the room, so he couldn't do that. Every child in the class, when they left at the end of the day, had to hug and kiss him on the cheek.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was there. I was there. I said, Milton, you can't do that. That's against the law. And he thought he was going to get away with it until he didn't. So these things do happen a lot. It's sad.
Yeah.
So
It's a universal evil, right? I'll tell you this. I don't. That's the one thing, and people can call it a prejudice, a bias, whatever, right? But
yeah,
if you're a pedophile and you're a convicted pedophile,
yeah.
proven with evidence, right? I'm all set with you. I don't, you know what I mean? Like it's to me that is a universal evil. If we can't protect our children in this world, then we'll go
That's
to
exactly the point.
yeah.
I had a sixth grader, wasn't even one of my reading group. I don't know why she came up. She says, "Mrs. Lewis, my aunt is molesting me,"
Oh wow.
and there's a law that says you have to question,
Sure.
call, and find out, or you could be arrested for not reporting it. I
Sure.
know that.
Yeah, you're mandatory.
Told me the story, and I said, "There's something about what you're saying, I believe." She was crying. I called her mother and she yelled at me. I said, "You're going to be sorry. You're going to apologize." When the mother came in, we had the principal there. I had people protecting me. She was going to kill me. She said, "I owe you an apology." It was her sister that was molesting the daughter
Oh
while she
wow.
babysat for her. It was a true story. So I said, ever since then, no matter what it is, if somebody takes something that doesn't belong to them or whatever, one of the students in my friend's class stole her wallet and her money. Of course, I got it back because I was the dean.
Yeah.
He's like, I said, "You're not going to get away with this one. I got you." But it's like so many people do this, and they feel that they're above the law.
Oh my
It's,
God.
I mean, that just the news the other day when this guy's getting away with this. They released him and said, well, maybe he didn't do it. Then they said that he did kill somebody. So why is he awaiting a murder trial on the outside?
Right. And it's not a, it's usually not a one-shot deal, right? I mean,
Yeah.
pedophiles are pedophiles, right? I mean, if you can
Yeah.
be, attracted to a child, there's something
It's
significant wrong.
scary, yeah. Yeah, well, this guy was attracted to a little girl, 15, another one, 13, and the kid doesn't realize it. She said, well, he liked me.
Yeah, that's
It's even
brutal.
sicker. So tell us about Roy and Jim and Vanchuk and how you created them. And I really like Roy the best.
Yeah. Well, it's
I
funny
like
because
I like the present God, yeah.
it was important for me to have, three very different, distinct
Yeah,
characters.
they were.
I'll be honest with you, Fran, right? The hardest part of the writing for me was the inmate's point of view, right? So I
Yeah.
10 years inside. I have a background in the military, right? I served in the Gulf War, so I've spent a lot of my especially my younger life, right, in service. Um, and this is not the world of grays, right? You're talking about the world of black and whites. Like when you put a badge on, if the rules are this, then they need to abide by it, and that's the end of it, right? And we enforce that. But the hardest character for me to write was Roy. I put more time into him because fortunately, I'm knocking on wood here, right? I've never served time. I don't know what it's like to be an inmate, but I spent enough time around them where it was like, all right, let me try to put myself on this person's shoes, right? I would say this: the ledger is written with the intention of bringing respect and recognition to a profession that few people know about, right? So I wanted to pull the curtain back on the prison system and say, hey, come take a look, right? 99, and it's probably more than 99%, but 99% of the people that I work with, both men and women in uniform, were honorable people, absolutely honorable people, and they're doing the right thing. There's always the one or two, right?
That's gonna ruin it.
Yeah, and we call them fence jumpers, right? So what that means is you could have either wore a badge or you could have wore a con number, right? Because you're an inmate that hasn't been convicted yet, right? So there were a few officers who were shady, right? And that's putting it mildly, right? And then we have the sergeant who I
Mhm.
needed a character in the book that personifies honor, right? And I love the saying, but it's like, loyalty above all things except honor. And that comes from the military, right? So I have your back no matter what goes on until you do something that goes
Yeah.
by moral code, right? Like if you do something that's incredibly dishonorable, it's like, when we throw an inmate in handcuffs, there's no reason to stop beating on the inmate. The inmate's in cuffs. He's been restrained. That's the end of it, right? And that used to drive me nuts if an officer would come over and try to, like, stop. If you want to hit him, make sure the cuffs are off, right? I will back you 100% until you do something that is so dishonorable that I can't do it, right? And that is one of the toughest parts of working in law enforcement, because if you hold your own people accountable when they mess up, there's we call it the blue wave, right? But whenever you're in trouble and you need backup and you call for it, right? You expect your brothers and sisters to, rush to your aid. If you're considered a rat or somebody who goes against your own kind, right? maybe you make the call and the backup doesn't show up, right? So there's a fine line. There's really a balance there that most people don't understand. And hopefully I was able to capture that within the book. But I have fortunately worked with officers, sergeants, lieutenants, captains who are very honorable people, right? And they we would hold each other accountable, right? Because iron sharpens iron. And when you get inside, we're held to a higher standard than the inmates, and we should be. We
You know what
absolutely.
gets me though, and it's on the news, and I actually saw it happen. The nursing home people of the AIDS abused the patients.
Oh my
I
God.
walked in to, because my sister said, "Why don't we put mom?" I said, "Mom's not going anywhere. She's
Yeah.
staying home." She tortured me. Where is he? She tortured me for 18 years. But I
Yeah.
would not put it. Oh gosh, I had AIDS. It cost me thousands of dollars for
Right.
the home health aides. But I walked into this nursing home just to see it, and one of the residents came over to me, and she was okay. She came over to give me a hug, and I said, "I'll give you a hug. You're a sweetheart." The aide smashed her in the face
Oh
while
my.
I was standing there. I said, "You're going to pay for this when I'm reporting you.
Yeah.
How dare you?" I said, "I didn't tell her that she couldn't hug me, and I didn't push her away. I said it was okay." And
Yeah.
she smashed her in the face. And I reported it to her higher up. They did nothing.
Oh my God.
They did nothing. It was the Eastchester home that was right near my house. My mom was in the hospital, and this man came in with his wife or something, and she told me what happened there. I said, "If you put him back, you're asking for him to be dead." I said, because that's crazy.
Yeah.
They don't do anything about it because they cover for themselves,
Yeah.
and that's what gets me even worse.
Yeah. It's
So this really got me. God had a lot of words to say, and I read them a lot of times because I said, "You could tell me whatever you want." So how does God play such a powerful role, and how did you get him to always say the right thing?
well, it's my interpretation of what I believe, who I believe God
Yeah.
is. I really think, friend, that, what I loved about his character, right, is he's prominent in the beginning of the book, he's prominent in the end of the book, and you feel him throughout the book, but he kind of stays out of it, right? And the reason for that is, we're given free will. So, listen, if you have free will, that means I can't get in there and make decisions for you, right? Which is what I really like. I think when certain characters pass and they return home and God starts talking to them, that was my chance, right, to flex muscle with my kids and my grandkids and say, listen, this is my vision of who God is, and He is kind and He is unconditional love, meaning there are no conditions, right? And He's going to forgive you and He's going to have mercy and this and that. So it was my way of being able to depict that really for my kids and grandkids. And I think as long as I kept them in mind, I was able to do the right thing with that character.
Well, I'm not going to tell them about the ending.
Yeah,
Because the ending, I was surprised at that ending.
yeah, me
I
too.
go, "Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Okay."
yeah,
And I said, "You know what? As each of the three characters at the end, whatever happens to them,
yeah,
it makes it more realistic.
yeah.
So that who's going to want to be a prisoner?
Right,
Who's going to want to be an official? Who's
right,
going to want to be a guard? Who's going to want to be a guard?"
right.
And of course, Van Schack was my favorite one
Yeah,
because they told him not to do it. He did it anyway.
yeah, yep.
Exactly. So each scene and chapter is so graphic. But how did you come up with the saying before? Each chapter starts with a different thing.
Yeah,
Those are the ones I read. The ones with the interesting titles I read twice.
yeah. I like putting in chapter titles in some of my books, right? Because there are times when you read the chapter title and you're like, I know what this is going to be about.
Yeah.
And there are some that I put in intentionally where it's a little bit off. Like, there's a chapter title in there called a llama, right? Like you have no idea what a llama is until you read the chapter and then you think about the chapter title and now it makes perfect sense, right? But for me, it just adds a little bit more intrigue into the story, and it also helps people because there's some heavy stuff in this book, right? There's some graphic violence that takes place, but there's a decision to be made here, right? Do I write reality-based fiction or do I make stuff up and soften it? And I'll tell you, friend, I've been writing for 30 years, and I've put out quite a few books. This is the most reality-based fiction I've ever written, right? And it's based on my background, whether I experienced it, directly, or it was, hearsay, or I knew that it had taken place. So when people read this book, they are literally taking a tour through a prison in Massachusetts in the mid '90s. It's exactly how it went down.
Well, I got a lot of hands out for this. I send my books to my pharmacist,
Yeah,
and I said my new book came. My new book came out last week. When
congratulations.
when lies win.
Yeah,
When lies and it came out last week, and I was impressed because I had to send 20 copies to my pharmacy.
yep.
I had to send 20 copies to my. I'll put that, just everybody wants them.
Good for you. Good.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. But the favorite part of the chapter was this life's menu. And
Yep.
I read this and I'm saying, yeah, apathy, a lot, disgrace, a lot, but hope and despair is like the opposites.
Yeah.
Faith and disbelief, humility and arrogance. And lately I've been hearing a lot of corruption, fear, and chaos. And then if somebody does something to you, instead of talking it out, they have animosity, hate them forever.
Yeah.
There's very little forgiveness in the world.
I know.
And
I know.
that's what bothers me. So how can people better understand those truths? How can people understand it? Because that's probably the core of the novel.
Yeah. It's really about accountability, right? Like, after I left the prison system, I went and worked in the department. Well, I shouldn't say I worked. I volunteered my time in the Department of Youth Services, so DYS, so younger people, right, who were one step away from adult incarceration, right? So I would go in there and I would say, listen, like, everybody has a story, and everybody has had really terrible things happen to them, myself included, right? But as you become an adult, you make decisions based on, all right, I'm going to make my choices. But if you blame something that your father did on you, therefore I went out and did this, and you start serving time, you have nobody to blame, right? It's all about accountability. Do not play victim. And I try to teach my kids this deal, right, as they were growing up. Listen, own what it is that you need to own and become a better person for it. We can't control what other people say or do, but we can control how we react to it. And I think in this book, I wanted to really put out, like, you can't really have any of the good without the bad, right? I mean, it's life. So
Yeah.
I want to have courage, right? But I learned, or I gained my courage through fear, right? So I had to stand up when it was hard for me to stand up. And then you realize I do have courage. So the book is really based on that. Like, so when you walk into a prison, there's a lot of negative emotions, but depending on your point of view, you can learn from that and take positives out of it.
Okay, before I forget, someone we all know and love, Dick Belsky, will be on Monday with The Vanishers. It's really scary. On the 20th, only because I'm doing him a favor, and I would not do this for anybody else, because he's in the hospital. He asked me to do him a favor. Charles Solzberg's brand new book. If they don't send it to me, I can't do it on the 20th of July. I don't do July.
Right.
But what better way to start August when with Tess Gerritsen and Shadow Friends? And on the 18th, Joe Guilford. On the 24th, the #1 interior designer in the world, Howard Wiggins.
Wow.
He's priceless. He's priceless. And if she ever gets on, Tiffany Warren with Harlem Wedding, we'll see what happens. She keeps canceling. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
But I'm all going to it. I got to brag in September. Interview the producer of the Late Night with Stephen Colbert.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yes, that's what they tell me.
Yeah,
I have no idea. And of course, Philip Margolin got a new one coming out also, whatever. So each chapter is so graphic. How would you define this? This chapter really got me. How would you define the chapter "The Greatest Love"?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? So it's part of the payoff. And again, I think the twist in the story is shocking to a lot of people, right? And it came late in the book, to be honest with you. Not just that it's at the end of the book, but me deciding to end it the way that I ended it, because it was really about honor. It was important to me to show the level of honor that's displayed by most men and women who wear the uniform behind the wall, right? So, yeah, it's tough. I mean, some of this is tough. It's like watching a bad car wreck, right? It's hard to look away. And as you know, Fran, you've read quite a few of my books.
Yeah.
I normally write male perspective to a female audience. I'm known for writing tearjerkers. This is me going back to my humble beginnings, right, and taking my writing full circle. So, and I'll give you an example of that. I was on a panel with two other best-selling authors, so there was the three of us, and the host at the time asked, as they started the questions, where did you each go to school to learn how to write? And one of them said, he had gone to Yale. The other uh, author ended up going to the University of Arizona, and I said I went to Southeastern. And the host said, "Oh, three fantastic schools. Southeastern is a medium security prison in
I know.
Massachusetts. So I'm not saying I didn't go to college. Of course I did, right, for criminal justice and English. But I really, really started my career learning how to write in the prison system, right? And then I became almost like a police writing type thing. And then I had to hone my skills over 30 years. But it's exciting for me to go back. And the first book I ever put out was called 6'5", A Different Shade of Blue. And I wrote it under a pen name, Stephen Herbert's, because I knew the book wasn't that great. I still needed to learn a
That
lot.
was yours. I
Yes.
did read that. I got that by accident.
Yeah, that was me.
I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, wait a
Yeah.
minute. I thought
Yeah.
it was you. So I read it and then I gave it to somebody. They go, oh my God, this is so good.
Yeah. Well, thank
And it
you.
was
And,
you, yeah.
30 years later, I come back to the same setting with a different skill set, right? So now I've been writing for 30 years. Now I can spin a tale and tell a real story versus let's just take a tour through the prison, right? So it was exciting to be able to do that. I doubt that I'll ever write about the prison system again. I think I got it out of my system, right? And kind of come full circle with it. But I'm excited about the book. And what I love is a lot of my readers who are older women have reached out to me and saying, hey, I really, really enjoy this. And again, I don't know if it's morbid curiosity. People want to see what's going on behind the veil, right? But
I had no idea what it was about when you sent it.
right.
And I had no idea when I just sat down and I could read a book like that in 2 hours, but I didn't want to. I
Right.
read each section by itself.
Yeah.
So this is my question. In the end, which, if not all the virtues apply and how?
Yeah. I don't think all of them ever
Some
apply.
of them don't, yeah.
Right. Some of them don't. But I think it's like, you look at the beginning of the book, right? And there's a
Yeah.
choice whether or not this character is going to pick a conscience, right? So at one point in the book, God tells one of the characters, like, whether you pick a conscience or you don't, there's still a price to pay for everything. And we're not talking about fire and brimstone. We're not talking about the eternal wake of fire. We're talking about, at some point you are going to be accountable, right, for what you've done and what you haven't done, right? So whether or not you're answering to yourself or you're answering to God, right? Like, and that's really what the ledger is about, keeping in mind that, at some point, right, you need to answer for what it is that you've done and what you've said. And I think if people keep that to the front of their minds, right, they live a little bit differently.
I really wish there was somebody that made you answer for what you want.
Yeah.
I was taught, and I decided one year. Well, my birth series is based on my life living in the South Bronx
Mm-hmm.
with my sister, and she said when I retired from teaching, I must have weighed 200 pounds because I was eating my way into oblivion.
Right.
And she said, "You look like a fat cow. Why don't you write a book?" I said, "You're going to regret that I ever did that." But yeah, I was sitting in McDonald's and I'm not allowed to eat that.
Yeah.
And my nephew looked at me and he's a trip and he said, I met Grandma Bertha. You look just like Bertha. That's not a compliment.
Oh God.
She was awful. And you look like Grandma Katie to my sister. You look like, so I said to my sister, no, you look like Tante Tilly, who was a spoiled brat.
Yeah.
So that's where Bertha and Tilly came
I'm from.
in the series, and it's stories growing up in the South Bronx with my sister, including the time I burned $8,000 in the oven. For real. I thought my father was going to kill me. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a burglary in the building, and I put the money in the oven, not thinking that the pilot light was on because I
Oh.
wasn't allowed to. It was hilarious. So
Wow.
I mean, You just never know what you're going to write about. But I
Yeah,
was always told, but I tell my students too, write about what you know.
yeah,
Write
yeah.
about what you know, and they would. I think that I was the reading coordinator. I loved it until the new
You.
principal came and she said, "You're going to teach writing." I go, I was licensed to teach reading. I had a license, I had a supervisory license. So she
Oh,
said, "We're not going to get along. You want my job?" I said, "I could get it because I have more." I said, I just want to teach reading. She made me the writing coordinator, which meant that I had to do something to read writing every day with these kids. And I hated every minute of it. But I used to walk in the room and they got up and clapped because
really?
it wasn't boring. No, because I would never say to them, write a story about your mother. But you watch a television program. If you could be the character, who would you be? If you could change something in this classroom and tell the teacher who's allowed to have homework and who's not, what would you do?
Right.
I mean, it was funny, but in the end, I love it. Now, the last chapter is called choir practice. How come? Of course, I can't sing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's what's funny is I
Yeah,
recently I've been collaborating with a gentleman from Alabama named Jerry Lathan, right? And we've written some biblical fiction, right? So we wrote a book on Peter, and I've since
yeah.
we finished the first draft for the Apostle John. So I'm writing biblical fiction as well. So I used his name as a nod to him, as my brother and my friend and my brother, right? To use his name as the Captain Jerry Lathan. So what happens is through the whole book, one of the sergeants keeps telling the rookies, like, you need to go see Captain Lathan and have, attend choir practice. Now, choir practice is basically drinking at the VFW, right? Like
That's cool.
having some drinks, right? So it's,
That is
it's
so cool.
reality based. And what happens is the old timer who's been retired for years, who was a captain, back in his heyday, the prison was even more violent, more dangerous. So when you go to choir practice, you buy
Yeah,
this man a drink and he starts to tell you stories. So you start to learn the history of corrections and the whole thing. And I love that chapter because I'm able to fit a lot of stories into it. And I use it as an epilogue, right? Where
yeah.
if you didn't read it, you didn't miss anything in the story. But if you read it, it was more information based on the prisons themselves. You know what I mean?
Well, if they read the last chapter, they'll find out what happened to the three of them too,
Yeah, right.
and
Right.
and what God thought about what they did.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. I think the prisoner wanted to go back. I
Yeah.
got the feeling that Roy wanted to go back,
Yeah.
but I think he wanted to take care of business when he did go back.
Right.
So, what's next for you, and when am I getting it?
Um, Definitely the John book. So we were on a beta team
Oh,
last
good.
night, which the beta team is, and I'm going to tell you at some point, and I know you're super busy, Fran, right? But I appreciate everything you do. At some point, I want to bring you into one of these where we have early readers, right? That'll read an arc, and so this one we're almost done with it, but it's the Apostle John,
Oh, nice.
and it's Jesus Christ
Well, I
ministry,
remember you said that. Yeah.
3.5 year ministry through John's point of view, right? So Jesus is standing there and he's talking and he's performing his miracles, but it's John, what John thinks, what John feels, like John watching this whole thing, right? Which kind of,
Yeah.
it's almost a reality based where, you feel, if Jerry and I are on our jobs, right? You feel like you're standing there with Jesus, like you're walking with him. So we want to know what they ate, what it smelled like there, what it was like to wear the clothes that they wore, right? So we got really, really deep into that. So that'll be the next book out. You'll obviously be one of the first to get a copy of that, as always. So yeah, I'm excited. And then hopefully for the rest of the summer, I spend, a couple months. I live on in Massachusetts, right on the coast. It's a
Oh,
bit,
nice.
but yeah, my wife and I will go to the beach as much as we can, and it's where I do all my reading, right? So I spend 3 seasons writing, and the summer I spend reading all the books that I've missed that I want to get caught up on.
Well, I'm hoping that the post office delivers my books.
Yes.
I read one that was very upsetting. It's called Witch Trial, and it's actually these girls that were teenagers that created a coven,
Oh wow.
and the lynx, and the dragons, and they killed somebody. They
Oh
did kill somebody that thought it's probably the saddest. It was well written, but I got really nervous while I was doing it because they, at the end, one girl gets, they arrested two for killing. One gets prison sentence for the rest of her life, and the other one says unproven.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really scary. So let me just end the stream like a